Good morning. It's the 29th of May, Saturday. The sun's peeking out through clouds and perhaps a bit of high mist this morning. And I thought I'd do some drawing this morning with one of the words in place. Today I chose truth. The paper is sea white all media paper. It's about 20 centimetres by 20 centimetres in size. And all I've done is stick the word on with some glue and draw in pencil lines before I start. But here I'm showing you that piece of ephemera from yesterday, that inchy. I've taken it off that black paper, carefully cut around it, because I want to make sure I create a frame or a pattern around it that I really like to make it special. So here's a piece of the moss green Fabriano tone paper, and I drew a pencil line around the tiles in the middle, and on this one I put some pencil lines around the edge to give me a border. And I thought I wanted to use the drawing pencils, the Derwent drawing pencils, to draw a design round there. And as much as I love this design, it's just a bit too overpowering. The colours are fab on the green. So I switched to blues and pale greens and sort of like reddy brown berries. And that seems to work much more. And it reminds me of William Morris stuff, the arts and crafts movement, his colour palettes anyway. And I'm much happier with that, but I think I might want to go more either with green or with cream there and see what happens. But I've got plenty of this paper, so I can experiment as I wish and complete what I'm doing and use for other things. Just see how it goes. It's really nice. So there's that. So this one, I chose the word truth today, basically because it's the one that jumped out of my piece of paper at me. But truth is an interesting word, and we all say we all have our own truths, and we do. There are things that we consider truth, which are our beliefs and our core values, and perhaps the way we see the world or how we'd like to see the world. But, it's interesting where I could sit next to you and watch a sunset. And if we told each other about our feelings and our experiences, what we saw with that sunset, it'd be completely different. So our truth of that experience is very subjective. It's our own. It's not an objective truth, as it were. But objective truth can also be masked by subjective truths. But Terry Pratchett, who's one of my favouriteest authors, he wrote a series of over 20 books based in the Discworld, which is a fantasy world, but it's different, but it actually makes sense of this world. It's a way of poking fun at things that go on here as well and getting people to think. He's very clever at what he did. And one of the quotes from one of his books called The Truth is that lies have travelled around, a lie can travel around the world before the truth has even got its boots on. And think today about the speed at which information can be passed from person to person through social media and everything else to do with the internet, then that's more true now than perhaps it was when he wrote that book many years ago. And it's just something to ponder and think about. But the other quote I like from him, I think is from the mythology of the Discworld or folklore of the Discworld. Can't remember which one it is. And it's a book where he explains sort of like folklore and myths from around the world and their meaning and how he's incorporated them and how they've inspired parts of his Discworld, and he talks about folklore and stories and how they're important for us to help us make sense of the world in some ways and to understand things and in other ways to experience things that perhaps we're not going to experience ourselves, where we're able to step into another character, somebody who's not of us, but experience their life and understand them and the world they live in and understand that and gain perhaps some empathy and understanding and insight and knowledge. So stories are really, really important. But in this book, The Truth, the quote is, there's the truth and then there's the truth. And they're not the same necessarily. So the truth, which is me as a scientist would say, it's the basic facts, the data, the information, facts. No spin on it, no interpretation other than these facts say this, this, and this, and you can see it. It's there. And in science, it would have to be repeatable, and not just repeated by the scientists who developed the experiment, but by other teams around the world to verify that this is so. That's how science works. And the aim is to be very objective about information and about data. But data can be manipulated. So, for example, at the moment, with the pandemic in the UK, the official figures quoted by the government of the number of people who've died from COVID is about 120,000. But the Office of National Statistics says it's more likely over 150,000. And then there are other people who say, well, actually, it's even more than that, because it depends how you define somebody who's died from COVID, where COVID has been a major contributory factor to their death. And different organisations are using different definitions. The government will want it to appear to be fewer people because it puts them in a better light. 120,000 people is still 120,000 people too many, really. But, you know, it's better than 150,000, which would be the other official figure. So even then, you know, the basis of how these figures are achieved is important to understanding what they mean. But there's also the truth, which means it's a story that's told about some experience or some information or experiment or whatever that people can sort of like buy into and can believe in some way. It may be more interesting than the boring facts because, you know, I don't mind looking through lots of facts. It was my bread and butter when I was doing research and as a scientist, you know, all the way, you know, from the time I started science in school right the way through. And even now I'll happily look at data and see where the data's come from and try to make sense of the methodology used and how that can affect the results, how accurate they are, or, you know, if things have been cherry picked and so on. But not everybody has either the time, the desire, or the ability to do such things. So you rely on other people to interpret it for you. Scientists will interpret it usually in a very objective way. There are scientists who've got into problems for cherry picking data that confirms their own personal belief or bias or desire for this to be true. But those scientists are very few and far between, thank goodness. Not that everybody believes that, of course, but, you know, a belief isn't necessarily the fact or the truth. But it's where, you know, it's a good example perhaps be of me relating something about my day. I could say, well, I went into the town to do some shopping yesterday. I walked past some men digging a hole in the ground. I stood and had to look down, and it was a hole and there was nothing interesting about it. It was just a hole. But lots of people were looking and we were all going, no, it's just a hole. And then I went and got my bread and came home. That's the truth. That's the story. But I could embellish it. And I could say, well, there were these men there. They looked like they were from the gas board. But, do you know, there was something a bit funny about them. They were trying to stop us from looking down the hole as if they'd found something. And when they do that, it's usually because it's something they don't want the public to see. So it could be treasure, perhaps, or perhaps a dead body or something else. And, well, I stood there for a while in the hope of catching something with lots of other people, and people were muttering about what it was. Somebody behind me had heard that the police had been called because they found something. So they were hanging on to see if the police turned up. But I couldn't because I had to be somewhere. And, you know, I'll tell you that. Which story is the most interesting? Which one would you think was correct? Well, they both are telling the truth in a way. So one just has the bare facts of that story. I stopped, I looked in a hole, people were digging a hole, I couldn't see to the bottom, so I moved on. But the other one has got that story around it, hasn't it? That whole kind of thing that pulls you in. And then that means that if I tell you that story, you might go and tell somebody, well, Angela told me that this had happened, but you might add your own little spin, or perhaps you picked up on some parts of it that you unconsciously embellish or emphasize so that the next person gets a different, slightly point of view of that story. And when they pass it on, it becomes something else. So the truth is a funny thing. It can change, and people can put a spin on it, is the polite way of saying, can twist it to suit their ends as well, or can cherry pick things to back up what they are saying. You know, you get it with all these adverts for these amazing things. You know, there's one on YouTube that goes around about this telescope that is apparently as good as, you know, really, really expensive telescopes, but it's a monocular, and it can see, it gives you a fantastic definition of the moon and things. And you're thinking, what? And as a scientist, I go, what? What are you on about? Because what they're describing just isn't what it should be. But people who don't know that will fall for the hype, for the information, and will buy something and will be disappointed with it, expecting a lot more from it than what it offers. So I'm always skeptical in some ways about things like that. I like to try and find out information to see if what they're saying is correct about so many things. And I'm not infallible. You know, I fall for some things just like everybody else. And from time to time, I mean, you afterwards, when I find the information, I just go, oh, Angela, you should know better by now. But I'm human. And sometimes a really good story will sway us into thinking about things. So, as I said, there's the truth, and then there's the truth. And it's quite true. And finding out which is which can be quite interesting. And of course, when it comes down to subjective things like what you believe or how you think your local community should behave or should be run, or things you should have available as a citizen, and perhaps political viewpoints, then these are quite subjective. They may be based on theory. They may be based on personal experiences or many, many other things. Or they may be based on people telling you a really good story about why you should believe them and why this is the best thing for everything. But is there one truth? Is there one thing that is right and everything else is wrong? Well, I think we can all agree there are some things that are very much objectively wrong. Murder, for example, is wrong. I think we can all agree on that, and perhaps on some other things, but others come down to more personal beliefs and not necessarily based in truth, as science would say is the truth. But they may come down to people speaking in a very alluring way to convince you that the way they think and the way they see the world is correct, and then, or others really you find distasteful. So the truth is just interesting. And I try not to get, I avoid getting into discussions about things like politics, I suppose, and what the truth of things is. And I certainly don't engage with discussions particularly about some other things, to be honest, unless I'm with people I know that you can have a discussion without people getting nasty and upset. But, you know, I'm not good at small talk, either, being an introvert, so who knows. But yeah, so I thought I'd pick that word for today, which is lovely. So now I've waffled on about the truth. What else? I had my second COVID vaccination yesterday, and so far I've been quite well. I haven't had any side effects yet, apart from the odd electric shock in one of my feet, which was a side effect last time. It was horrible overnight. My stomach was upset before I even started. It's settling down day by day, but we'll see how it goes. So I'm slightly optimistic I'll be okay, but it's been less than 24 hours since I had the vaccination, so you know, it may take a while before the side effects kick in, as this dose has got more of whatever the effective ingredient is and the vaccine in it. So, it really pumps the boost up. So we shall see. Maybe I'll have no side effects because the work's been done by my body already. I don't know. We'll see. But that was a nice experience. My doctor's surgery does things really well. They've got a waiting area just for vaccination. There's no more than 4 people allowed in there, and the doors are often very much open because they're automatic doors. So it only takes somebody to wander by in the day, sort of like wander by the door outside, and the door opens and you get fresh air blowing through to the doors on the other side, which are often open. So it's like, and so the air changes. And there was one person waiting when I got there. And then before she went in, a chap came along with 2 carers who's obviously had a lot of learning disabilities and so on. And they were fab because the other person who was waiting went in almost straight away after he'd arrived. And the receptionist came and spoke to the people in the vaccination clinic, saying they got somebody there who couldn't wear a mask because this young chap couldn't. And they actually took him in almost straight after the last one to give him his vaccination. And it was brilliant. They were really quick. And then there was me. And I was in and out within just, it was probably less than 5 minutes. So 2 doses done. So I shall look forward to the booster dose they're talking about now sometime in the autumn. And it's probably along with the flu vaccination as well. So there's that. Afterwards, I did go to a post office. I had some goods to return that I'd bought on Amazon. There were some clothes, and it's been a nightmare dealing with the company I bought them from. They weren't as they were described. One wasn't even the style I'd ordered. They weren't even the size that they were supposed to be. And the quality wasn't as described. And I hadn't actually realised because I bought 4 shirts at the same time. And one had arrived really quickly. It was exactly as it was described and ordered, and I was so chuffed with it. And so I assumed the others were later in delivery because they were out of stock. They had to get more stock from wherever they were produced or whatever. And stupid me, didn't check, did I? Different seller. So I got something that was not up to standard. So I could have just gone on hassle, returning and so on. I thought no, because they were about £48 in British money. That's about between $60 and $70 in US money. So it's not a small amount of money. If it was just a couple of pounds, I might have gone, oh well, live and learn and won't make that mistake again as you make that mistake again. But this was a fair amount of money. So it took me many messages back and forth until they agreed to refund me 100%. And I asked, is this 100% just of what I paid you, or is it with my return fees? How much it's going to cost me to send you back? And I just got back 100%. So I hope they're going to refund me the cost of post and packing because it was over £20. Which effectively means I would only get half my money back if they refund me just the cost of the products, which is not fair. Sort of like, I don't know how this has happened with Amazon. There was a time when it would be free returns, but obviously not anymore. Is that I don't know, would that be the case if I'd taken it, if I decided to escalate it to Amazon, to their complaints department. But the woman who served me in the post office said that people are always saying they can't send things back through Amazon for free like you used to. The minimum is $3.99 now. So I said, oh, didn't know that. Because I rarely ever have to send anything back. So lesson learned, so done anyway. And it's the principle of the thing. I'd be absolutely aghast if somebody bought some of my art and had to say that it wasn't what they expected, that it wasn't like the photograph and or how I described it. And I do everything I could to make them a happy customer. whatever that took. If it was a full refund and the cost of post and packing to have it returned to me, you know, I'd do it, even if it meant I was out of pocket, so that, you know, their interpretation of the description may have been different to what may not have understood what the description was, or perhaps they saw something in the photographs that I didn't, or who knows. But that's never happened. But I'd like to think if it did, that's how I deal with it. That's how I deal with it with my colouring books, and the editors have got advice to give me about things they'd like to see changed or altered in a particular drawing. Then I work with them, because ultimately they're paying me, and they're doing this in order to try to get everything right, and they see things in a way I don't. So what's acceptable to me, to them, is maybe not acceptable. So I'm learning. Don't always put it into practice, but I am learning. So it's important. It is. So I did that. So that was more people. Then I went to a smallish and quiet supermarket. I know, my favourite one, the Co-op, and to get some food that I could easily prepare or eat, so, you know, in case I became unwell but was still hungry or whatever, or really tired. And I'm glad I did, because I was shattered by the time I'd done this, because although there were some people there, it was only a hand, 3 or 4 people in shopping at a time. Not there were people on the door saying how many could go in, but it's just how many there were there. And of course about 3 people working there. And that's okay, you know, it's a big enough store that it's almost like you're there on your own. So it's been really nice going there, because it's so nice to see things and think, I really fancy that. I can shop online, I can do things like that, but there's something nice about being able to see things and seeing what date range you've got. You know, I picked up fresh mango. It's prepared, it's lazy, because I am lazy with preparing things like mango and so on, but I will eat it. Whereas if I've got a mango, I often forget I've got a mango in the fridge and it goes off before I eat it. Great. So I go, oh, I forgot that was in there, because it's behind something else. But there we are. So it was a very quiet day yesterday. I could have done with going to bed, but I had a delivery of some stuff coming. No, not art stuff. No, not clothes. It was toiletries, because my skin is strange, and I needed some things that I can only really get online, that local places don't stock it, because as far as possible, I will only use products that are cruelty-free and preferably vegetarian or vegan. Obviously, when it comes to medication, I don't have a lot of say in that. Though all the vaccines are vegan, or vegetarian at least. They're approved by the Vegetarian Society, so I'm happy with that. And because I checked, because I do. Because if one wasn't and the others were, I'd be kicking up a fuss as to which one I have. But on my own ethical beliefs, or perhaps not, but no, they're all perfectly fine, so that's okay then. So coming to the end of this time lapse, and you can see that we've got quite an abstract pattern there all the way along, and I just felt I needed to do that. I'm using a finer pen than usual, it's a 0.2, and I'm leaving it there, and I'll continue with this tomorrow. So all that remains is for me to say thank you for watching, thank you for listening. If you like what you see, give a thumbs up. If you like my channel, please subscribe. If you haven't subscribed already, if you have subscribed, thank you. Take care of yourselves, enjoy your weekend, and hopefully, if nothing else, you'll get perhaps some inspiration out of this video today and seeing that design appear. So thank you very much once again, and may the truth be with you. Bye-bye.